The garden was full of laughter, lights, and music. White flowers hung from every corner, and the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting a warm golden glow on the wedding guests. It was the kind of celebration people dreamed of. Fancy clothes, cheerful smiles, and cameras capturing every moment filled the scene. The bride stood at the center, her dress sparkling as she turned, holding the bouquet high in her hands. Everyone gathered behind her, waiting for the traditional toss. A group of women giggled and pushed closer, hoping to catch the bouquet. It was supposed to bring luck and love. People whispered, "Who will catch it? Maybe Anna, maybe Claire." In a quiet corner, behind the line of flower pots and folding chairs, a small boy stood watching. His clothes were old, his shoes dusty, and his hands held tightly onto the edge of his shirt. His name was Eli. He didn't belong to the wedding party. He wasn't even a guest. He was the son of the woman who cleaned the wedding venue, Maria. Maria had worked since morning, wiping tables, arranging chairs, and clearing up petals that kept falling out of place. She told Eli to sit in the back and wait for her. She didn't want him to be in the way. But Eli had asked if he could watch the bride once, just for a moment. She had smiled and nodded. "Just stay quiet and don't move." Eli had never seen a wedding before. He watched everything with wide eyes, the dresses, the decorations, and the food he could only smell. His stomach growled, but he didn't say a word. Then came the moment. The bride turned her back to the crowd. Everyone cheered. She counted, 1, 2, 3, and threw the bouquet into the air. It flew higher than expected. The flowers turned slowly in the sky, like in a dream. The crowd reached up with open hands, jumping and laughing. But the bouquet didn't land where they stood. It sailed over their heads and dropped right in front of Eli. There was a pause. Eli looked around. No one else was near him. The bouquet lay on the grass, petals still fresh and bright. His small hands reached out. He picked it up slowly, unsure if it was allowed. Then he ran, straight through the crowd, past the confused guests and the frozen bridesmaids. Eli sprinted toward the one person he loved the most, his mother. Maria was wiping a table when she saw him coming. Her eyes widened. He held the bouquet high, running as fast as his feet could carry him. When he reached her, he didn't say a word. He just placed the bouquet in her hands and smiled. "This is for you, Mama," he whispered. "You never had one." Maria stood still, bouquet in hand, her lips trembling. The music continued, but the world seemed to stop around her. Her eyes filled with tears, not just because of the flowers, but because of what they meant. She had never told Eli much about her past. She had once dreamed of a wedding too, long ago. A white dress, music, laughter, and someone who would hold her hand forever. But life had other plans. Her fiancé died in an accident just months before their wedding. Since then, she had raised Eli alone, working every job she could find. She never got her bouquet. Until now, guests began to notice. Whispers spread. "Why did the boy run off? Who is that woman? What's going on?" A bridesmaid walked toward them with a confused look. She looked at the bouquet in Maria's hands and then at Eli. "That was meant for the guests," she said. Her tone was firm, but not unkind. Eli stepped in front of his mother. "She's my mom. She never had a wedding." There was silence, again. Then someone clapped, a gentle, slow clap. It came from the bride herself. She walked over, her heels clicking softly on the stone path. Her smile was kind, and her eyes shone with emotion. She looked at Maria. "He gave it to the right person," she said softly. The guests didn't know what to do. Some still looked unsure. Others wiped their eyes. The bride turned to the crowd and raised her voice. "This is what love looks like. Let's remember this moment." Maria held the bouquet close. Her eyes met her son's, and they both smiled. Standing in the middle of a world that often forgot people like them, but in that moment, they were seen, and everything changed. Maria stood still with the bouquet in her hands. The petals were soft, the stems fresh, and the scent of the flowers filled the air around her. But she barely noticed. Her heart was pounding, and her eyes were locked on her son's small, smiling face. Eli looked proud, as if he had just given her the greatest gift in the world. He had. The bride's kind words still echoed in Maria's ears. He gave it to the right person. But even as the bride stepped away, the feeling of being watched returned. Guests whispered in small groups. Some looked curious, others looked uncomfortable. Not everyone understood what had just happened. Maria gently bent down to Eli's level and brushed his hair back. "Why did you run?" she asked softly. Eli answered in a quiet voice. "You always look tired, Mama. You always give everything to others. Today was about love, and I thought, maybe you should get something too." Her hands trembled as she hugged him. A few guests slowly approached them. A young woman in a light blue dress smiled and said, "That was beautiful." Another nodded and added, "I've never seen anything like it." But not all faces were friendly. One man, wearing a sharp gray suit and holding a wine glass, spoke louder than necessary. "Traditions are important," he said. "There's a reason the bouquet is meant for single women. It's not a toy." A few people nearby nodded. Others looked away. Maria felt a wave of embarrassment rise in her chest. She hadn't meant to cause a scene. She hadn't even seen the bouquet coming. It had all happened so fast. The bride walked back to her guests, trying to calm the tension. She took her husband's hand and whispered something into his ear. He smiled and nodded. Then she turned to face the crowd. "Let's take a short break before the cake," she said cheerfully. "Everyone enjoy the music and drinks." The group slowly scattered. The mood began to shift again, but Maria still felt out of place. She turned to leave, but a gentle voice stopped her. It was Mrs. Avery, the venue's event coordinator. She was an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She had worked at the venue for years and had always treated Maria with quiet respect. "Maria," she said kindly, "would you walk with me for a moment?" Maria nodded and followed her. Across the garden, still holding the bouquet, they stopped near the edge of the lawn where it was quieter. "I've known you for 5 years," Mrs. Avery began. "You work hard, never complain, and you've raised a fine boy. I saw what he did today, and I saw how people reacted." Maria looked down, unsure of what to say. Mrs. Avery continued, "You didn't break anything. You didn't ruin anything. That moment, what your son did, was more real than anything I've seen at a wedding." Tears returned to Maria's eyes, but this time they were softer, lighter. She looked up. I just never expected it. He's so young, but sometimes he understands things better than adults. Mrs. Avery nodded. Children often do. Back near the wedding guests, Eli sat on a bench under a tree, swinging his legs and looking up at the sky. A little girl in a pink dress came over and sat beside him. They didn't speak. They just watched the branches move in the wind. As Maria returned, she saw them sitting quietly. She smiled. Eli looked at her bouquet and asked, "Do you like it?" She sat beside him. "I love it," she said. "It's the first one I've ever had." He thought for a moment, then asked, "Did you ever want a wedding?" Maria looked at the petals in her hand. "Yes," she said softly, "a long time ago. But things changed. Your father and we had plans. Then he got sick. And after he was gone, I couldn't think about weddings anymore." Eli nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but sensing the sadness in her voice. She added, "But life gave me something even better. It gave me you." They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the music and the voices in the distance. Maria's heart felt lighter, even if only for a little while. As the sun began to set, the garden lights turned on, casting a soft golden glow. The wedding continued in the background, but Maria and Eli had their own quiet moment. She gently placed the bouquet in his hands and said, "Let's take this home." He grinned, holding it like treasure. And as they walked back through the garden, hand in hand, a few guests watched them go, not with judgment, but with respect. Sometimes the most beautiful part of a wedding isn't the dress, the music, or the cake. Sometimes it's a small act of love that no one expected. And that evening, the boy who caught the bouquet gave the world a reason to remember. The evening air turned cooler as lanterns flickered to life along the garden paths. Soft music drifted from the speakers, and the scent of fresh flowers mixed with the warm aroma of food. Laughter returned to the crowd, but not everyone had forgotten what happened earlier. Maria and Eli sat quietly near the edge of the venue, away from the main group. The bouquet rested gently in Maria's lap. She held it like something delicate, something rare. Eli leaned against her side, his small fingers, brushing the soft petals again and again. They didn't speak much. There was no need. The silence between them was full of meaning, but not everyone had moved on. From the center of the wedding, a woman named Gloria kept glancing in their direction. Gloria was the groom's aunt, known for her sharp tongue and strong opinions. She believed in rules and traditions. When the bouquet had landed in Eli's hands, Gloria had frowned deeply. She turned to her sister beside her. "It's sweet, I suppose, but it's not how things should go." A boy catching the bouquet? It makes no sense. Her sister replied, "It touched people. Maybe that matters more." Gloria sighed and took a sip from her glass. Emotions are fine, but rules give weddings their meaning. Not far away, the bride and groom sat together, smiling and speaking, quietly. The bride, Rachel, kept looking toward Maria and Eli. She had seen the whole thing clearly, the boy's joy, the mother's surprise, and the hush that fell over everyone. It had felt real. More real than the speeches, more real than the photos. Rachel rose from her chair and walked away from the guests. Her dress trailed behind her as she made her way to the quiet spot where Maria and Eli sat. Maria stood quickly when she saw her coming. I'm sorry if we caused any trouble, she said softly. Rachel shook her head. No trouble at all. I came to thank you. Maria looked surprised. Thank me? Yes, Rachel said. Today is full of decorations, food, music, but what you and your son shared reminded everyone what love really is. That moment, it was honest. Maria's hands tightened slightly around the bouquet. He just wanted me to have it. He didn't understand the meaning behind the toss. Rachel smiled. That's what made it special. He didn't chase luck. He gave love. She bent down and spoke to Eli. You gave your mother a memory she'll never forget. That's a gift, greater than any bouquet. Eli smiled shyly and nodded. Rachel reached into the small purse hanging from her wrist and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I want to give you something. Maria hesitated. Oh no, you've already been too kind. But Rachel held the paper out. Please, it's not money. It's something else. Maria took it and opened it slowly. Inside was a voucher for a local dress shop. Printed on it were the words, one custom dress, any occasion. I had it made for a friend, but she moved away, Rachel explained. Now, I think it belongs to you. Maria looked at the paper, speechless. Rachel continued, maybe one day you'll wear it. Not for a wedding, but for yourself. For a moment, that's all your own. Maria felt tears rising again. She blinked them back and whispered, Thank you. Rachel gave a gentle nod and returned to the crowd. Eli looked up at his mother. Will you wear it someday? Maria smiled and held the voucher close. Maybe I will. Just then, Mrs. Avery approached, carrying a small tray. On it were 2 plates, one with cake, the other with sandwiches. I thought you two might be hungry, she said warmly. Eli's eyes lit up. Thank you. As he ate, Maria turned to Mrs. Avery. Do you think it was wrong? What happened earlier? The older woman shook her head. No, Maria. You reminded people of something they forget. Weddings aren't just about dresses and songs. They're about love. Pure and simple. Maria nodded slowly, her thoughts deep. Later, that evening, the wedding photographer asked if he could take a photo of Maria and Eli together. That moment with the bouquet was one of the best parts of the day, he explained. Maria hesitated, then agreed. She sat with Eli in her lap, bouquet in hand, as the camera clicked. The photo captured something soft, something pure, something that spoke louder than words. As the night drew to a close, guests began leaving, hugging each other goodbye and gathering their things. The garden lights dimmed and the music softened. Maria picked up the bouquet and looked at Eli. Ready to go? He nodded. Together, they walked toward the staff quarters. Behind them, the party faded into the night. But in their hearts, something beautiful remained. Something that no rule, no tradition, and no disapproving glance could ever take away. And as Maria placed the bouquet gently on her small bedside table that night, she realized it wasn't just a bunch of flowers. It was a reminder that even the smallest hands can carry the biggest love. The moon rose high over the quiet garden as the wedding drew to a close. Most of the guests had gone. Laughter faded into the night, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of someone stacking chairs. Lights still glowed in the trees, but the energy of celebration had settled into calm. Maria tucked Eli into his small bed inside the modest staff quarters near the back of the venue. He had fallen asleep with the bouquet beside him, one hand gently resting on the flowers as if afraid they might disappear. She pulled a blanket over him and brushed his hair away from his face. For a few minutes, Maria just stood there, watching him sleep. Her mind was full. The events of the day had stirred something inside her, memories she had locked away long ago. She stepped outside, needing air and space to think. The night breeze was soft, carrying the smell of roses and fresh-cut grass. Maria walked slowly to the edge of the lawn, where the light from the lanterns didn't reach. She looked up at the stars and let out a quiet sigh. She remembered the day she tried on a wedding dress for the first time. It had been a simple white dress, not expensive, but lovely in its own way. Her fiancé, Daniel, had picked it out with her. They had dreams, plans for a small ceremony in a church near her childhood home. Nothing grand, just family, love, and a promise. But Daniel had fallen sick. The doctors had said there was time. They were wrong. Maria had returned the dress after the funeral. She never spoke about it again. Until today. When Eli handed her that bouquet, something inside her shifted. It wasn't just a kind gesture. It was as if the universe had reached back into her past and handed her something she had lost. Not the wedding itself, but the feeling of being seen, being loved. She sat on a bench under a tree and closed her eyes. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps. Mrs. Avery appeared, carrying 2 warm cups of tea. "I thought you might still be awake," she said, handing Maria a cup and sitting beside her. "Thank you," Maria replied softly. They sat in silence for a while, sipping their tea, listening to the sounds of the quiet night. Then Mrs. Avery spoke. "He's a special boy, your Eli." Maria smiled. "He is. I don't know how he knew." "Children sense more than we think," Mrs. Avery said. "Sometimes they see what adults forget to look for." Maria nodded, then asked, "Did it seem strange to everyone? What he did?" "Maybe to some," Mrs. Avery said. "But strange doesn't mean wrong. Most people spend their whole lives following rules they never stop to question. But real moments, honest ones, don't follow a script. That's what made today unforgettable." Maria looked down at her cup. "I used to dream about weddings, about family, a home, a husband to share everything with. After Daniel passed, I let those dreams fade." Mrs. Avery placed her hand gently on Maria's shoulder. "You may not have had the wedding you imagined, but you have something more powerful. You have a son who loves you deeply, and who gave you that moment with a pure heart." Maria felt her eyes grow wet. She wiped them quickly and nodded. "I just never thought anyone would notice us," she said. "We're always in the background, cleaning, setting up, clearing plates when everyone else is dancing." "Today," Mrs. Avery said, "you were the center of something beautiful." They finished their tea and Mrs. Avery stood. "You should rest. Tomorrow brings new work, as always." Maria rose as well. "Thank you, for the tea, and for listening." Back in the room, Eli stirred in his sleep. Maria lay beside him, careful not to wake him. Her eyes rested on the bouquet still clutched in his hand. She reached out and touched the flowers gently. In that moment, she made a quiet promise. To keep that bouquet, not just as a reminder of a lost dream, but as proof that love still found her. Not in the way she had planned, but in the way she needed most. The next morning, sunlight poured through the small window, waking Maria slowly. Eli was already up, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a notebook in his lap. He was drawing. "What are you making?" she asked. He turned the page toward her. It was a sketch of a woman in a white dress holding a bouquet. Beside her stood a little boy holding her hand. "It's you and me," he said proudly. "From yesterday." Maria smiled. "It's beautiful." He looked up at her. "Do you think one day you'll wear a real dress like that?" Maria paused. "Maybe. One day." Eli grinned. "You'd look like a queen." Maria laughed gently, her heart full. She had no crown, no palace, no stage to stand on. But she had something stronger, a boy who believed in her, a memory that would never fade, and a new beginning that had already begun, quiet, humble, and full of love. The next day was bright and full of sunshine. The sky was clear, and a soft breeze moved through the trees around the wedding venue. Workers moved quietly across the lawn, taking down lights, folding chairs, and clearing leftover decorations. The celebration was over, but its memory still lingered in the air. Maria arrived early, as usual. She wore her plain uniform and tied her hair back before starting her work. She carried her cleaning supplies and moved from one corner of the garden to the other, picking up petals and ribbons. But her steps were different that morning, lighter, almost peaceful. Eli followed her, skipping along the stone paths. He carried a small cloth bag that held the bouquet, still fresh from the night before. Every now and then he peeked inside to check on it, as if making sure the moment hadn't disappeared. Inside the main hall, Mrs. Avery stood near the front door, speaking with a tall man in a dark suit. He had a serious look but spoke softly. His name was Mr. Linton. He was the owner of the wedding venue. He usually visited only once a month, but today, he had come after hearing about what happened the day before. "I want to meet the woman," he said to Mrs. Avery. "She's outside cleaning," Mrs. Avery replied. "Her name is Maria." He nodded. "Bring her in, please." Maria was wiping the wooden railing when Mrs. Avery approached. "Maria," she said, "Mr. Linton would like to speak with you." Maria looked surprised. "Is something wrong?" "No," Mrs. Avery said kindly. "He just wants a word." Maria wiped her hands and followed her into the hall. Eli waited by the door, hugging the cloth bag close to his chest. Inside, Mr. Linton looked up and gave a small smile. "Maria," he said, "I've heard about what happened at the wedding, and I saw the photo." Maria lowered her eyes. "I didn't mean to disturb anything. I told Eli not to get in the way." Mr. Linton shook his head. "You didn't disturb anything. In fact, you reminded us all of something important." Maria looked at him, confused. He continued, "For years we've hosted weddings here. Beautiful ones. Perfect on the outside. But what your son did, that moment with the bouquet, it wasn't planned, and that's what made it powerful. Real love doesn't follow a schedule. It appears in quiet, honest ways." Maria listened, unsure where the conversation was going. Mr. Linton stepped closer. "Mrs. Avery tells me you've worked here for several years. She also says you've Never missed a day, and that your work is always excellent. Maria nodded slowly. I try my best. He smiled. It shows. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. A folded letter with the venue's logo on it. I'd like to offer you a new position, he said. We're creating a new role for event coordination assistants. It involves helping with setup planning, guiding guests, and managing small details during weddings. It comes with better pay, training, and more flexible hours. Maria stared at the letter in shock. You mean me? Yes, he said. We believe you have something special. Calm presence, attention to detail, and, clearly, a deep understanding of what moments matter. Tears formed in Maria's eyes, but she held them back. Thank you, she said quietly. I didn't expect this. Mr. Linton nodded. You deserve it. Eli peeked in from the door just then, and Mr. Linton waved him over. Eli stepped in slowly, clutching the bouquet bag tightly. And this young man, Mr. Linton said with a smile, might just be the best wedding guest we've ever had. Eli looked up shyly. I just wanted Mama to smile. Maria reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. You did more than that, sweetheart. Later that afternoon, Maria and Eli sat beneath a tree in the back garden. She read the offer letter again and again, her fingers gently running over the printed words. Eli looked up. Are you going to say yes? Maria smiled. Yes, I am. He clapped his hands and grinned. Will you still bring the bouquet with you? Maria nodded. Yes, it'll remind me that something small can change everything. At that moment, the world felt different. Not because of money or a title, but because someone had seen her. Someone had seen her work, her heart, and her quiet strength. For the first time in years, Maria didn't feel invisible. As the sun began to set again, she held the bouquet close. It was no longer just a symbol of a forgotten dream. Now it was a seed of something new. A door had opened, not just to a new job, but to a new belief in herself, and all because of one boy, one bouquet, and one beautiful, unexpected moment. The following week brought gentle rain and cooler mornings. The air felt fresh, and the garden at the venue seemed greener than before. Flowers bloomed brighter, and the earth smelled alive. Maria arrived early each day, now in a different uniform. Her new role had started, and though she still felt nervous, something inside her had changed. She no longer walked with her eyes down. She moved with care, but also with quiet confidence. Mrs. Avery had taken time to show her the new tasks, checking seating charts, reviewing guest lists, and making sure decorations matched the bride's requests. At first, Maria thought it would be too much. But step by step she learned. Eli still waited for her in the afternoons, sitting under the big tree with his drawings and books. He greeted her each day with a hug and questions about how things were going. On Thursday afternoon, Maria finished her tasks early. She walked to the back lawn, where Eli was drawing something on a folded piece of cardboard. He had the bouquet beside him, still held together, though the petals had begun to dry. What are you making today? Maria asked. Eli looked up. A sign. I want to sell drawings to help people feel happy. Just like the bouquet made you feel. Maria sat beside him. That's a kind idea. He smiled proudly. I want to do something good. As they sat together, the main gates creaked open. A car pulled into the driveway. It was long and black, with silver trim. A woman stepped out, dressed in a fine coat and polished shoes. She looked important, and she walked with purpose. Mrs. Avery met her near the front steps. They spoke for a few minutes before Mrs. Avery turned and waved Maria over. Maria stood quickly, brushed the grass off her clothes, and walked toward them. "Maria," Mrs. Avery said, "this is Ms. Clara Delmont. She's planning a wedding. Here next month." Maria nodded politely. "Nice to meet you." Ms. Delmont offered a handshake. "I heard about the bouquet moment," she said. "The story has been shared online, even made it to my niece in London." Maria felt her cheeks grow warm. Ms. Delmont continued, "It was real, honest. I want that feeling at my wedding. No fancy speeches, just something people can remember with their hearts." Maria smiled. "I understand. I'd like your help," the woman said. "Not just with planning. I want you to be part of the event, not hidden behind the scenes." Maria hesitated. "I usually work in the background." Ms. Delmont shook her head gently. "But your story is part of this place now. I want you involved. Maybe you could welcome guests or share a few words. Nothing formal, just from the heart." Maria didn't know what to say at first. She had never spoken in front of a crowd. She had spent her life avoiding attention. But something about the way the woman looked at her, like she truly meant, it made Maria feel seen again. "I'll try," she said softly. Later that evening, Maria sat with Eli in their small room. The bouquet lay on the shelf above her bed, its colors fading, but its meaning still strong. Eli looked at her and asked, "Will you speak at the wedding?" Maria nodded. "I think I will." "Will you tell them about the flowers?" he asked. "I'll tell them about love," she answered, "and how it doesn't have to be loud to be real." He rested his head on her arm. "That's what makes it special." Days passed quickly. Maria worked hard, learning to balance her duties while preparing for her first time speaking at a wedding. She practiced in front of a mirror. She wrote notes in a notebook. Sometimes, Eli listened and clapped, saying, "It's perfect, Mama." On the morning of the wedding, Maria dressed in a simple cream-colored blouse and a long skirt. She pinned a small white flower in her hair. It wasn't a gown, but it made her feel beautiful. The garden was full again, filled with chairs, lights, and quiet music. Guests arrived, smiling and chatting. Ms. Delmont stood at the front, holding her partner's hand, both glowing with happiness. When it was time, Maria stepped forward. Her hands trembled a little, but her voice was steady. She spoke gently. "Love isn't always big or loud. Sometimes it comes quietly, in a small gift, a kind smile, or the hands of a child offering flowers to his mother." The crowd listened. Some nodded. Some wiped away tears. She smiled at Eli, who was sitting in the front row, swinging his legs and grinning wide. "And sometimes," Maria continued, "one small moment can remind us of what matters most." When she finished, the garden was quiet for a moment. Then came applause, not loud, but warm and full. Later, a guest approached her and said, "That was the best part of the wedding." Maria thanked them, her heart full. That night, as she placed the bouquet gently back on the shelf, she knew something for certain. She had found her voice. not just for others to hear, but for herself to believe. And in that quiet bloom of courage, a new chapter of her life had begun. The days passed quietly after the wedding where Maria spoke. Her words had reached many hearts, and some guests even sent letters to the venue, saying how touched they were by her message. Maria read each one slowly, folding them carefully and placing them in a box beside the bouquet, which now rested in a glass jar on her small table. The petals had dried, turning soft shades of cream and pale pink. The scent had faded, but the meaning remained. Every time she looked at the bouquet, Maria felt a quiet strength rise inside her. Eli noticed the change too. His mother smiled more now. She walked taller. She talked with people without fear, night, she hummed while folding laundry, something she hadn't done in years. One afternoon, Maria and Eli were walking through the market to buy fresh vegetables. As they passed a bakery, a woman stepped out and waved at them. "Are you the lady from the wedding speech?" she asked. Maria paused, surprised. "Yes, I suppose I am." The woman smiled. "You made everyone cry in the best way." "I was there." "My daughter hugged me tight after you spoke." Maria smiled. "Thank you, that means a lot." The woman handed Eli a warm pastry. "For the brave boy who started it all." Eli accepted it with wide eyes and a polite thank you. Maria nodded in gratitude, and they continued walking. Moments like that became more common. People recognized them. Some smiled. Others shared their own stories. One man spoke of losing his wife and finding hope again. A young couple said they had been unsure about marriage but decided to move forward after hearing Maria's words. Each story added another layer to Maria's heart. She had lived quietly for so long, thinking no one noticed her or her pain. Now, she realized that sometimes one small act could echo far beyond what anyone expected. At the venue, Maria continued her new duties with care. She helped couples plan their big days, but she also listened. Some brides cried from stress. Some families argued over details. Maria didn't just organize, she comforted. She shared stories, gave kind advice, and reminded people that love wasn't about perfection. On one special morning, Mrs. Avery called her into the main office. The owner, Mr. Linton, was there, holding a stack of papers. "We've been thinking," he said. "It's time to open something new." Maria sat down, listening closely. "We want to start a small workshop," he continued, "for young women who want to learn event work, planning, setup, speaking, everything. And we want you to lead it." Maria's eyes widened. "Me?" Mr. Linton nodded. "You've shown what it means to lead with heart. We don't need someone with a fancy degree. We need someone who understands people." Maria looked down at her hands. They were worn, calloused from years of hard work. But now, they held something new: respect, purpose, and trust. "I'd be honored," she said softly. That evening, she shared the news with Eli. He jumped up and clapped, spinning in circles. "You'll teach people, Mama, just like you taught me." She laughed and hugged him close. "We'll do it together." The workshop began 2 weeks later. A group of 8 young women joined, each from different backgrounds. Some had never spoken in front of a crowd. Some had never worked outside their homes. Maria welcomed each one with a warm smile and simple words. You belong here. She taught them how to fold napkins, arrange tables, speak calmly, and think of others. But more than that, she taught them to believe in their own worth. On the final day, they held a small ceremony. The students stood in a line, holding small bouquets made of simple garden flowers. Maria stood in front, proud and moved. One of the students stepped forward. "You gave us more than lessons," she said. "You gave us courage." They handed Maria a bouquet, fresh, colorful, and full of life. Maria accepted it with trembling hands. She held it next to the dried one in her heart, a symbol of where she had been and where she was now. Later that night, as she placed the new bouquet beside the old one, Eli asked, "Do you still think about your old wedding dream?" Maria smiled. "Sometimes. But now I dream of something bigger. I dream of helping others grow." He leaned against her. "I think you're the best kind of bride, one who saves hearts instead of wearing a crown." Maria kissed his forehead. "And you're the boy who started it all with one brave step." Outside, the wind blew softly, carrying the scent of new blossoms through the open window. The petals on the old bouquet stayed still, but inside Maria's heart, something was always blooming. Her life had changed, not with noise or fame, but with kindness, courage, and a boy who believed she deserved to be seen. And in that quiet beauty, she had found everything she never knew she needed.